The new live-action One Piece show on Netflix is easily one of the best anime adaptations I've seen, but it suffers from a fatal flaw. Live-action Luffy. But before I get all negative, I just want to say I've been reading One Piece for nearly 15 years, and it's literally my favorite manga of all time. Eiichiro Oda, the creator of One Piece, is my hero, and I'm psyched he got to see his vision truly come to life. The Netflix show just answers a long-standing question I've had. What if you just adapted a manga by literally just doing it beat for beat, instead of trying to write some ham-fisted plot that works in a 2-hour Hollywood movie? Turns out it works great. This show is a blast, except for the glaring issue I mentioned, which I'll explain in a minute. I think this live-action adaptation of One Piece is a great way to experience the manga if you've, got a job or a life of some kind and you don't imagine you'll have the time to watch 1,000 episodes of anime. I think the Netflix show is doing a great job of truncating the story to its most essential elements and presenting it in a more streamlined tale, which still retains the strongest, most memorable aspects of the source material.
I will never lose again!
One Piece is timeless. The best part of One Piece remains the deeply emotional characters Oda conjured. Particularly those heart-rending origin story flashbacks every crew member gets. I teared up in the flashback scene where Sanji is starving on that deserted island with Zeph, just like I always do. And it didn't make the slightest difference that it was in live action because the fundamental premise is so heartbreaking. One Piece's other iconic feature is the mind-bending world-building Oda brings to the table, something I think no other human on the planet has ever matched. And the show has painstakingly, slavishly recreated all of Oda's designs and world-building details. So for the most part, the live-action show has successfully captured what makes One Piece legendary, and that alone is commendable. While I still think this show is a pale shadow of the masterwork from whence it came, it's still by far one of the best anime adaptations I've seen, even if that's not really saying much with disasters like Cowboy Bebop, Attack on Titan, or the Death Note movie to compare it to. They stuck with what One Piece is, and it works, despite how annoying Luffy is. For me, the reason the One Piece adaptation falls short of true greatness comes down to one crucial factor. I hate the way they've played Luffy. Anytime Luffy is on screen, I am dying inside.
The cringe corroding my soul.
Kobe?
And while I initially thought that I just wasn't digging the young actor playing Luffy, Inaki Godoy, but it really wasn't his fault. He's a young dude, so I'm sure his performance will evolve with time.
I'm working on that.
But there was just something about him that absolutely did not work for me. Was it the voice? The odd, raspy tone Inaki Godoy chose to use for the character?
So I'm gonna kick your ass just like I did theirs.
Perhaps I'm just used to hearing Luffy sounding shrill and abrasive. Then I wondered if it might be the absence of Luffy's characteristic ear-to-ear grin. This actor was kinda going for some kind of badass performance.
It's not cool. Don't mess with my hat.
Where I see Luffy as more of a comic hero that felt no need for posturing and generally behaved like an idiot. But the more I watched the show, the more I realized it was none of those things. The issue fundamentally comes down to the same problem that anime adaptations have always had. How do you play a shonen protagonist?
I must have faith in who I am.
And I'm specifically talking about the main protagonist here. Like, how exactly do you play Goku or Naruto without it coming off as unbelievably contrived, forced, and awkward? Shonen protagonists like Luffy are so absurd and cartoonish, so emotionally capricious and arbitrarily motivated that it leaves an actor very few choices on how to play the character. First of all, from a real-world perspective, Luffy is clinically insane. Luffy doesn't process fear or resentment or jealousy the way the rest of us do. I think Oda's intent when writing the character was to present him like an enlightened Zen monk that may come off as childish, stupid, or selfish, but secretly possesses unshakable conviction and virtue, like Yoda. Except if you look at a lot of Luffy's actions from a real-world perspective, something you're forced to think about when he's no longer an animated character or manga illustration, but an actual flesh and blood human in live action, Luffy's childish immaturity can come off more like sociopathic insensitivity or legit low IQ. Like, think about a real human child plunging a knife into his face at age 7 or whatever. That's some serial killer shit. Luffy's stupidity, impulsivity, and hyper-real emotional responses are at a level that comes off as cringe in live action.
Of course I will!
Compared to when you see the exact same thing in an anime, where it's just endearing. And then there's the problem of tone. I talked about this in my RRR video, but different audiences have different tastes. And based on our history and cultural context, our media evolves to suit our needs. Japanese anime and manga had decades to figure out the precise tone and vibe, both in terms of aesthetics and in terms of the voice of the characters, to dial in a performance that is melodramatic but still emotionally engaging. Unfortunately for us outsiders, trying to translate the vibe and voice of anime into live-action Hollywood films has always run into this problem. It's the same reason a lot of people, including me, cannot watch dubbed anime, because the dialogue just sounds weird in English.
I'll murder you!
The timings, the sense of humor, it's all just off when you translate it, or you remove the original voice acting talent that brought the character to life. Think of it like this: could you translate Jay-Z's lyrics into Japanese without losing some aspect of his persona or some of the flavor of what he's saying, especially the linguistic musicality of his words? Well, the same thing applies to adapting anime. You tell me, does this come off as human to you? If it does, you might need to seek immediate medical attention, especially when you consider that the rest of the show around Luffy more closely resembles the tone of something like Pirates of the Caribbean than it does actual anime. So this dude occasionally going full on anime is just weird. But there was a secondary factor that wasn't doing Inaki Godoy's performance any favors: the editing.
So that's where it goes.
I cannot understand why they chose to edit Luffy the way they did in this show. If you notice, they always seem to hold on Luffy just a little bit longer than they should, especially after he delivers a joke or a particularly bombastic line.
Kobe? God, that hurt!
It's nothing crazy, but they hold just long enough for things to get
Real awkward.
And this isn't the case with the other actors on the show. Zoro, Nami, Usopp, and Sanji all get a fair look, and their jokes actually land because they don't have to stand there for that extra beat looking like assholes. The only explanation I can come up with is that the editor hates Inaki Godoy. Maybe Luffy his girlfriend or something, I don't know. The rest of the casting in this adaptation of One Piece was great though. The supporting characters like Shanks, Garp, Dracule Mihawk, Zeph the Chef, they're all killing it. In fact, it was the scene where Zoro faces down Dracule Mihawk where the show really started to work for me. It's also one of the coolest moments from early One Piece, and it put me in a bit of a nostalgic coma for a second. The guy playing Zoro is great and he's cracking me up.
All great fighters call out their finishing moves.
Yeah, you're gonna fit in just fine.
But he's playing it fairly deadpan, which is naturally more believable in a live-action production. Same goes for Sanji, he's playing it fairly straight, and I thought the actor did an excellent job. But since they've chosen to exclude a lot of Sanji's hypersexual, obsessive, borderline stalkerish behavior with Nami and all other women, He's definitely fitting into the live action space a lot better than Luffy. In the end, I'm just happy to see that someone put in the time and money to make a One Piece adaptation that's not complete trash like I'd expect. And they were smart enough to bring Eiichiro Oda in to produce the show and help keep it true to the source material. I also sincerely hope Oda made all the cash in the world. He deserves it. But I'm still not convinced that characters like Luffy, Goku, Gon, or basically any classic shonen hero can be executed in live action. Maybe if you had a great actor and the perfect vibe to sell the performance, but that seems increasingly unlikely to me. Anime protagonists exist within their own little bubble universe, and while we now have the power to bring whole manga worlds to life in live action, I fear that the protagonists of those stories will never successfully jump off the manga pages and breach the boundary of live action reality. But if you're like me, even if you hate live action Luffy, you'll probably enjoy this show. So check it out. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Cheers. I'll see you in the next one.